From the academy to the command post, the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast covers the leadership lessons, mentorship, and tough conversations needed to build a resilient firehouse. Rated as one of the best fire and emergency services podcasts, get ready to be empowered by host Kevin Ferrara as he presents another informative episode you won't want to miss. Get ready, folks. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody. You're listening to AFSO 21's Weekend Wrap-Up podcast. Here is your host, Kevin Ferrara.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara. Listeners, the fire service in North America has historically been defined by its battle against the Red Devil. For over a century, the culture, training, and leadership structures were forged in the heat of structure fires. To understand the necessity of the EMS Officer 1, the topic of this episode, one must first examine the historical trajectory of the fire service. Throughout the mid-20th century, emergency medical services were often an afterthought, frequently delegated to funeral homes or private transport companies. The landmark 1966 white paper, Accidental Death and Disability, the Neglected Disease of Modern Society, served as a catalyst for change, highlighting the inadequacy of pre-hospital care and prompting the federal government to invest in EMS systems. Fire departments were the natural choice for housing these new medical capabilities due to their existing infrastructure, rapid response times, and geographic distribution. However, this integration often led to cultural friction. Fire officers were trained in command and control for physical hazards, while the nuance of clinical medicine required, a different set of leadership skills. For decades, the fire side of the house held its prestige, while the medic unit was often sometimes seen as a secondary priority. The emergence of the EMS Officer 1 is the formal recognition that EMS leadership is a specialized discipline that requires its own set of competencies separate from, yet complementary to, traditional fire officer roles. The dawn of the 21st century has seen a radical transformation. Today, fire departments are more accurately described as community health and safety agencies. With fire suppression incidents declining due to better building codes and prevention, emergency medical services have surged to fill the void, often comprising the vast majority of departments' workload, upwards of 80% in some fire departments. This shift is not merely a change in call types, it's a fundamental change in the mission. Consequently, leadership must reflect this reality. The introduction of the EMS Officer 1 role is the institutional response to this evolution, ensuring that the clinical mission receives the same level of command-level attention that fire operations have enjoyed for decades. The EMS Officer 1 is a professional designation that signifies a transition from a technician to a leader, while a paramedic or EMT focuses on the patient in front of them. The EMS Officer 1 focuses on the providers, the system, and the community. This role is defined by NFPA 450, Guide for Emergency Medical Service Systems, and NFPA 1021, Standard for Fire Officer Professional Qualifications. Yet the true essence of the position goes beyond regulatory compliance. It's a role that requires a mastery of clinical protocols, an understanding of healthcare law, and the ability to manage human behavior under extreme stress. It's the first line of supervision that ensures the boots on the ground are supported, equipped, and performing at their peak. Without this specific rank, there's a dangerous gap between high-level administration and the chaotic reality of field medicine. When we discuss the importance of the EMS Officer 1 to the community, we're talking about survival rates. In a high-performance EMS system, the difference between life and death often comes down to systemic efficiency. The EMS Officer 1 manages the variables that lead to success: response times, scene choreography, and the seamless transition of care to hospital staff. By overseeing the daily operations of medical units, the EMS officer ensures that the community receives a consistent standard of care. This is particularly vital in socioeconomically diverse areas where the fire department may be the primary or the only access point to healthcare for many residents. The EMS Officer 1 acts as a safeguard for these vulnerable populations, ensuring that medical equity is maintained through rigorous oversight. Traditional fire service leadership is often autocratic, which is effective on a fire ground where split-second, non-negotiable commands are required for safety. However, the EMS environment, well, that's different. It's a world of nuanced clinical judgment and patient interaction. Leading in this space requires a coaching style of leadership. The EMS Officer 1, well, they must be able to sit down with a crew after a difficult pediatric arrest and conduct a constructive debrief that addresses both clinical performance and psychological impact. This requires a high level of emotional intelligence. A leader who only knows how to bark orders will fail in the EMS Officer 1 role, as they will stifle the critical thinking skills that are the hallmark of an elite paramedic. One of the most critical functions of the EMS Officer 1 is the management of clinical quality improvement programs. In many departments, CQI is seen as a punitive process, a way to catch people making mistakes. A true EMS Officer 1, well, they flip the script. They use data to identify systemic trends. If multiple crews are struggling with a specific advanced airway procedure, the EMS Officer 1, well, they don't punish the individuals. They identify the need for better training or equipment. This data-driven leadership ensures that the department is always evolving. It transforms the agency from a reactive organization into a proactive healthcare provider, directly benefiting the community through higher clinical success rates. The EMS Officer 1 operates at the intersection of medicine and law. They're responsible for ensuring that their subordinates adhere to HIPAA regulations, consent laws, and the complex ethical considerations of end-of-life care. A single breach of patient confidentiality or an unethical refusal of transport can result in multi-million-dollar lawsuits and the loss of public trust. But not just anyone can fill this role, because not everyone has the discipline to stay current on the shifting legal landscape of pre-hospital medicine. The EMS Officer 1 must be a gatekeeper of ethics, ensuring that even in the middle of a chaotic night shift, the rights and dignity of the patient are protected. The crisis of mental health in first responders is well documented. EMS providers are exposed to chronic trauma, sleep deprivation, and high-stress decision-making. The EMS Officer 1 is the first responder to the responders. They're in the best position to notice the early signs of burnout or PTSD. This leadership role involves creating a culture where it's safe to talk about the mental toll of the job. By integrating the EMS Officer 1 into the ranks, the department provides a dedicated advocate for the workforce's well-being. This is a specialized skill set. It requires training in peer support and critical incident stress management that goes far beyond traditional fire officer training. EMS is often the only part of a fire department that generates revenue through billing. Therefore, the EMS Officer 1 must also be a financial steward. They manage the logistics of expensive medical supplies, medications, and technology like 12-lead cardiac monitors. Effective leadership in this role means ensuring that resources are available when needed without being wasted. They analyze call volume trends to recommend the placement of units, ensuring that the taxpayer dollar is used to provide the fastest possible response to cardiac arrest and traumas. This administrative expertise is a key reason why the position requires specialized selection and training. The EMS Officer 1 serves as the primary liaison between the fire department and the broader healthcare system. They interact with emergency room physicians, nurses, and hospital administrators. This requires a professional who can speak the language of medicine as fluently as the language of fire. This integration is vital for the chain of survival. When an EMS Officer 1 builds strong relationships with local hospitals, it leads to better feedback loops for providers and smoother transfers of care for patients. This role bridges two very different worlds, ensuring that the patient's journey from the 911 call to the ICU is a continuous, high-quality experience. Beyond the clinical, the EMS Officer 1 is a safety officer. Medical scenes are often volatile, occurring in traffic, in unstable buildings, or in environments involving violence or substance abuse. The EMS Officer 1 provides an extra set of eyes to ensure that the crew is safe while they're focused on the patient. They manage scene flow, coordinating with police and other agencies. This protective oversight is crucial. If a crew is injured or a scene becomes unsafe, well, the mission fails. The ability to maintain a global view of a scene while others are in tunnel vision on a patient is a hallmark of an experienced EMS leader. Incorporating the EMS Officer 1 in the rank structure is a statement of professionalization. It tells the community, the staff, and the medical community that EMS is not an add-on service. It's a core competency. As we move towards concepts like community paramedicine and mobile integrated healthcare, the EMS Officer 1 will be the one managing these new frontiers. They'll oversee clinicians who treat patients in their homes to prevent hospital readmissions. This future requires leaders who are visionary and adaptable. Selecting someone for this role who is merely putting in their time would be a disservice to the future of the profession. Historically, the fire service often relies on seniority for promotion. While experience is valuable, seniority does not equal competence in EMS leadership. The EMS Officer 1 must be a subject matter expert. You can't supervise a paramedic if you don't understand the pharmacology of the drugs they carry or the physiology of the patients they treat. Promoting based on years of service alone, without a rigorous assessment of clinical knowledge and leadership aptitude, puts the department at risk. Unlike where a student who passes their final fire or EMS exams by the skin of their teeth, well, they're still called a firefighter or EMT. That's why the role of an EMS Officer 1 demands the best and the brightest, those who are committed to the clinical mission and possess the character to lead by example. Therefore, barely meeting the minimums, well, that's not going to be enough. Perhaps the most lasting impact of an EMS Officer 1 is the mentorship of junior members. The first few years of a medic's career are formative. An EMS Officer 1 who takes the time to teach, to explain the why behind a protocol, and to model professional behavior creates a legacy of excellence. They're responsible for the succession planning of the department's medical side. This mentorship ensures that when the current leaders retire, there's a cohort of well-trained, ethically sound, and clinically proficient providers ready to step up. And finally, the EMS Officer 1, they're an advocate for the patient, for the provider, and for the department. They advocate for the best equipment, the latest evidence-based protocols, and the recognition that EMS providers deserve for their specialized skills. This advocacy requires courage. It sometimes means challenging the status quo or pushing back against administrative decisions that might compromise patient care. This is why the role requires someone of high integrity. They must be willing to stand up for what's right in the interest of public safety, and in doing so, put themselves in the direct line of fire when confronted by those pushing back. In other words, is the EMS Officer 1 willing to fall on their sword? So as we wrap up, let's be reminded the integration of the EMS Officer 1 into the fire and emergency service is not just an administrative change, it's a necessary evolution. As the primary provider of emergency medical care in most communities, the fire service has a moral and professional obligation to ensure that its medical leadership is as robust as its fireground command. The EMS Officer 1 brings specialized knowledge, clinical oversight, and a dedicated focus on community health that traditional roles may overlook. By formalizing this role, departments improve patient outcomes, reduce organizational risk, and provide a meaningful career path for the next generation of providers. Ultimately, the community is the greatest beneficiary of this leadership. In their moments of greatest need, citizens deserve a response system that's led by professionals who are dedicated to the highest standards of medical care. The EMS Officer 1 represents the vanguard of this commitment, bridging the gap between traditions of the past and the healthcare needs of the future. It's time for every fire-based EMS system to embrace this role as a cornerstone of their mission. I hope what we discussed today creates some thought as to whether your organization needs an EMS officer, and if so, who do you think would be best suited to fill that role? If you're serving in this role, I'd love to hear your feedback about what challenges you may have had to overcome. So please feel free to send that to podcast@afso21.com. That's podcast@afso21.com. Well, listeners, that's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and stay ahead of the call.
Thanks for listening. To follow Kevin and the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast from your favorite streaming platform, open the podcast description and then click the Support the Show link, or go to afso21.com. From there, click the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast link, which will allow you to follow the show, download episodes, learn more about our contributors and the podcast, subscribe, which gives you exclusive access to premium and/or bonus episodes, or support the show, where you can make a much-appreciated contribution of your choice. You can even click on the podcasts we love to build your personal podcast library. We here at the Weekend Wrap-Up podcast appreciate you and look forward to bringing you more episodes that support the work you're doing in fire and emergency services. Remember, click the Support the Show link or head over to our website at afso21.com. Stay safe.